You said okay. I'm not sure how to do that. Let's see. Nice to meet you, Stephanie. Yes. Would you guys have no? No. Now, yes. Now, so the last time we only used this, right?
Yeah, we use this.
You
Just all you use.
over your ear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here. Okay. I said otherwise I will just use here. Okay.
Okay, you can check yourself.
Yes.
Is it good? Okay.
Yes.
Anyway.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. My bad.
Huh? Hello.
you're
Check.
entertaining
Check.
everyone before the.
Check.
Okay.
Check. Check. Check.
Yes.
Hello. Hello. Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hello. Hello. I'm just speaking undertone, but yes.
Okay. Yeah. Check.
It's really-
Is it awesome?
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. I'm sorry that we're running a little bit late as many of the events are today, but we're really excited to be getting started. And if you're standing near the back, please feel free to come inside a bit more. We have some more seats. Don't be shy. And so today we'll be talking about the for COP28, particularly focusing on the plant-based commitment. So you might have noticed that there are some more plant-based options at this COP. There is a plant-based food park. There are some other restaurants and options nearby, and that is something that we advocated about with COP, Yango, and Provide International. We'll be sharing more about soon here, which I'm really excited to get into. And then focusing also more on the background of advocacy, making sure to give some context to the work that has been calling for this in past years and to the youth call and passion for this from youth leaders and advocates around the world this year, which is really a critical aspect as well. So you can notice that we have some young leaders up on the first panel, which is what we'll get started. And then we'll move from here more to talk about the plant-based aspect. We'll have some more speakers coming for that. And then we'll give some more context, including some of the other actors involved and advocacy involved for more of the general climate-friendly catering, aside from the plant-based and youth aspect. So giving some more of the general coverage. And lastly, we'll close with some closing remarks, looking to the future of where do we go from here? How can we keep this legacy going? So really excited about that. And so for this first panel, we'll be talking to Caroline Wimberly, Stephanie Cabobianco, Catering, and Yara from COP28. So that's a little bit of the order we'll be going in. And so I'd love to start with you, Caroline. And I really want to hear from you the background of this advocacy. I know you've been involved for many years before the critical involvement this year. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and also any of the key takeaways you want us to have here today?
Thank you, Lana. I know you want to hear all about it. So many things. Hi, everybody. I'm Caroline Wimberly. I actually work for One Acre Fund. But I'm the co-founder with Stephanie also, and Silke is not here from Germany, of the Food at COP campaign, which is part of Youngo, which we started because we were very frustrated. The food served at the climate conferences was pretty poor climate wise and nutrition and taste wise, but mostly the climate aspect was most disappointing, that there wasn't ambition with the food did not match the ambition of the conference. So I've worked in the past actually trying to influence the catering at COPs. It's an NGO called Brighter Green and is part of the Food and Climate Alliance. And I know there has been effort since at least COP23. I don't know about if there were any sophisticated coordinated efforts to influence the catering before that. But at COP23, there definitely was. And the Center for a Livable Future at Johns Hopkins University partnered with UNFCCC to try to make the food more sustainable. They said that they aim to have 60% vegetarian food at the conference. Being at that conference, I think they had some kind of creative accounting, because I would not say that it seemed 60% vegetarian. They kind of I don't know, they did like salad bar toppings. They factored that into it in a weird way. So there was an attempt. The cost was prohibitive for veg stuff. There was an attempt. So that was very exciting. Then at COP24, there was a bit of a slip in Poland. And I was part of a group within the Food and Climate Alliance that did a great LCA analysis of the menu that got a lot of attention, because it was really, really disappointing how heavily emitting the menu items were. And it was a buffet style. So just from a lot of perspectives, not great for climate. And food waste also. There was a lot of food waste. So at COP25, I actually met you at COP25. Yeah. And we got together and decided that I was a young person then, but that as youth, this call for climate-friendly catering really is most powerful coming from Youngo and youth constituency. So that has led to efforts at COP26, 27, and now more successfully at COP28.
And we're very
Love it.
excited about that. And Gloria will talk more about that.
Yeah.
But first, going to Stephanie to build some more about that moment where.
Oh, wait, I can't.
Okay, yes, thank you, Caroline, for that introduction, because yes, that's how we started this campaign. We were frustrated that we were trying to lower the emissions to get to, the Paris Agreement targets. But when you go to all of these places, all you find is very high emissions food. So we thought, okay, at least from here, we need to lead by example. If they are doing that in many other places, why we are not doing this in UNFCCC, where we have also lots of opportunities, lots of knowledge to guide this process. And we also went to speak with one of the representatives from the Secretariat, and they said it was up to COP presidency to decide on the menu. So that was also good that we realized that was the process. Because we were talking with the catering people, we didn't know how to get it started. And also they said that it was important that the countries support this process. And I guess that now we have lots of countries supporting plant-based transitions, so that is also good. And yeah, I think that's how we promoted this inside of Youngo. More people came together. We started to gather endorsements from different organizations wanted to put for it. It was more like 100, right? Or way more? Okay, yeah. Like civil society organizations getting together in that first stage. And yeah, at some point it got to today. So it was, we are very happy, the efforts throughout the years, and also thanks for Pro-Veg Food push, we could move things forward a little bit faster.
I think this is working. So that's fine. Yes, for sure. So, Yalan, I don't know if you want to come,
I mean, this is flowing smoothly. Right?
Okay, so they have given us a good picture on how this whole campaign started. So we thought it wise that COP27, I think we didn't really, there was no success in terms of this campaign. So this year, we decided to take it a step further and we decided to work with other young people. I think one part that I really love about this campaign is the whole idea about collaboration, working with different people, adding different voices to strengthen this. And I think that has been the pivotal point for us, and that has led to the success of this campaign. So we wrote a letter, yes, with the support of Proveg, and then also Food at COP, Yongo coming together. We wrote a letter directly to the COP presidency and then telling him the key things we want. We wanted food that is affordable, climate friendly, nutritious, if possible, locally sourced. Yeah, if it's possible. And we asked them for 75% plant-based diet to be served here at COP, even though there are seven two-thirds. I think that's a great milestone that we have achieved. So right after the letter, we were actually excited to see that he actually responded directly to our letter, expressing his key interest in actually ensuring that these three acts that we had on the plate will be met. And that was an excitement for us because for the first time ever, that's a high level person coming down to listen to young people like us. So after the response, we didn't want to just lay back. We did a lot of follow-up. So we met again as a team and we're like, okay, what's the next step? Let's take it a step further. And then we're able to schedule a meeting with them. So we moved it from the letter aspect to meet with the catering team at Germany, SB 58. So at Bonn, we met there and then we engaged them further. We presented our ideas again to them. And then they had several questions. And one of the most important one was how can we make the food affordable? Because we were asking for affordable meals and we know affordability would depend on so many factors, your background, how much you're earning and all of that. So that was a big ask. Then we came back and we did a lot of research. We had to reach out to FAO experts, Food and Agriculture Organization experts. We had to look out for people who put together this cost of affordable meal, track them, send out emails, meet with professors, statisticians, and all of that, because we wanted to give them the right information and because we actually wanted to see this work. So for me, that was very impressive for young people to go further beyond their expertise to get the right information. So right from there, I think that is when we made a presentation to them, to the entire catering committee with Vicky, who is actually the head of the catering committee. We presented our ideas to them, right from how they can even ensure food labeling, carbon labeling, and all of that. Even I think we made recommendations. They could collaborate with Thrive, we said Climato. We mentioned so many organizations and didn't just leave them hanging. We gave them very good options. So I think that has been the major milestones with our journey when it comes to ensuring that food here is actually climate friendly, and that has led to the success of it. Overall, I think that we can evidently see, I don't know if we have gone around, maybe we can see that these are some of the things they are ensuring. You can see the food labels, you can see that they are trying their best to meet the standard. And for me, that is a milestone. And when you look at how diverse the team is, the team that pushed the campaign, including the other young people, we solicited ideas from Yongo, especially when we wanted to make a presentation on the affordability of meals. We said we don't want to decide on our own within the small team. So we sent out a survey. People filled, people from Africa, different angles, just to give us a clear idea on how young people actually see what affordable meals could look like. And then we actually presented this. So for me, that is very brilliant and significant. And actually, it's a boost to our confidence as young people that we can actually lead this whole climate change agenda, build that sustainable environment that we envision for ourselves and the next generation. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Gloria. That was an amazing overview. And I'm sure you might have a few more questions, but I think that really gives a great look at the advocacy this year and a lot of the different aspects of the meetings, the presentation, the letters. So thank you so much for doing the hard task of seeing what happened this year. And I'd love to hear more about the Conference of Youth and how that also took into consideration this youth campaign and advocacy.
I think first of all, I think you guys, okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Or wonderful. First of all, I just want to thank Food for all their hard voluntary work. And I think what I'm going to do is just provide an example of basically to show you the fruits of your work, because without you guys, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did at COI. So maybe take a step back and tell you guys more about what the Conference of Youth is. The Conference of Youth is an event under UNGO, which is the official youth and children constituency of the UNFCCC. And basically it happens every year, a couple of days before COP. It brings around youth from around the world and it educates them, connects them together and so on and so forth. This year it took place from the 26th to the 28th of November, and it's gathered around 1,000 participants per day. And so initially, when we wanted to design this conference or this event, we looked back and we saw that in previous COPs and events and conferences, a lot of the youth did demand, like, hey, the food's really, really expensive. But also, just like you guys said, like, we're here advocating for sustainability, and there's no plant-based options. And so we want to provide mostly plant-based options at our conference. But we had a survey go around for our delegates, and most of them could not fully commit to a plant-based diet, which is, understandable. We can't force them to eat something that they do not want to. But as per your guidelines, we try to provide 60% vegetarian options at the conference. And so that was available to them, and we worked really, really hard to provide 3 free meals a day for our delegates. So we're never hungry, and I think that's really, really important in an event, because you're tiring. These conferences are really, really tiring, and you need something to like fuel your energy throughout the day. And then another thing we did is the packaging was completely sustainable, biodegradable. And I think the most exciting part is that there was 0 food waste throughout all of this. We partnered with a company called Reloop, which is a UAE-based organization. And what they do is they support individuals and companies in recycling to make sure like their waste is properly taken care of. And what we did is we dedicated only a certain spot in the conference for people to eat. So when you're done eating, you just leave your food, and then the workers would come take your food, and then they'd segregate, the plastic, the packaging, the food, and so on and so forth. And I actually do have some numbers here, which is really, really exciting. A lot of food waste, which I think is typical for a conference. But we had 281 kilograms of food waste in total, which is a lot of food. And that was translated into 56 kilograms in compost, which is pretty good, I think. And that saved us 356 kilograms in greenhouse gas emissions, according to their reports. And yeah, just wanted to say thank you again. And I hope maybe this exemplifies the kind of work you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. And we will open for questions soon in case anyone has any. Start thinking about that. But first, I'll do a question for the panel, which is just where do you see this going from here? After COP28, what do you see the next step or the next moments? And if you'd like to reflect on that.
Yes, I think that's working. Cool. Thank you. I think that from now on, as a youth, we need to get together to make sure that from now on, this will be the base. And if they want to include, of course, more plant-based foods and more nutritional foods, of course, it's gonna be great. But I think we should make a commitment with every COP presidency to keep this a standard, a minimum standard. And then, yeah, that's how I think things moving forward.
Yeah, I think basically I don't want to see this end. It should go beyond just 2/3, it should be able to influence other aspects when it comes to sustainability and not just food. And I want, just like we mentioned, we want this legacy to actually stay. And this conference should actually be something people should take cue from when you look at or when you envision a sustainable environment just within this 2 weeks? People should come here and be transformed to be able to take something back home. Because we know when you do something within 3 days, you start getting used to it. Then a week, then 2 weeks, you definitely will take something home. So we want it to be that example so that when you are going back home, you know that you are actually going to practice that in your homes for your younger generation to also pick up. So yeah, I want this legacy to stay and not end here.
I think we're going to continue to work with more partners is how I see it. And we're going to hear from Paul, I hope soon, about all the work he's done this year. I would love the idea as a trained chef. I love the idea of doing more work with chefs. I think that would be awesome. I think just the food industry in general needs a lot of work. And yeah, just more partners, us to be louder in a strategic way.
Yeah.
Strategic loudness. Yeah, more partners and continue as the baseline and continue to educate it at the same time that this is not, we're not trying to dictate what people eat more than set an example of what I call food systems transformation on the plate, like what it needs to look like kind of going forward.
Thank you all so much.
I have nothing particular to add. I think, again, the work that you did serves as a great guideline for others to use. And I think what's really great is the amount of research you guys done and to kind of provide like, here's what you can do step by step, kind of solve all their problems for them in a sense. It just makes it a lot easier to implement. So I think I'd say thank you for your work. And I do have some questions. Maybe we can talk after this intervention. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I hope more events will follow in your footsteps of looking at this example. So now I'll open it up to any questions, particularly if you have any questions on the background, the youth advocacy. That's some of the focus that we'll be wrapping up here. So does anyone have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
At first, I would like to thank you for doing this work. I've been to Koi and I've ate like a lot of the free food. I benefit a lot from it, and I'm glad that there's plant-based options. And I'm really grateful for it for the efforts that you've done. And I'm from Taiwan, and I'm a university student who's in a sustainability club advocating for plant-based policies, plant-based diet in the school, in the campus. But I would like to ask that because we have from Yara, you have talked about you've given the surveys to people to see if they're okay with like 100% plant-based diet, but there will be voices saying that they cannot fully commit. So do you think it is possible to advocate for like 100% plant-based diet, or the maximum is like 75 or 80% plant-based diet? And the second question is, like, we all have this ambition and this commitment that we want the policymakers to have and the catering, the restaurants, but how do we ensure that they have implemented? How do we ensure that they are, after they say yes to it, how do we ensure they really do it? Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I can I can go on the first one if you want.
Okay.
So I think, yes, definitely it could be at some point 100% plant-based, because why not? Everyone can eat plant-based food. I think that people were really like caring about the options. I think it was like, the business as usual. And it's only 2 weeks, I think it's very possible. Plant-based foods are great and can be tasty and suitable for everyone. So I see no problem in having a 100% plant-based menu. At some point, they did it in the Golden Globes. Why wouldn't they do it in a climate change conference, right? When we are tackling social issues, environmental issues, nutritional and health. So yeah.
Thank you.
Guys is like, how do we make this a more attractive options for youth? Because I'm guilty, but like I'm personally very, very nitpicky with my food. I'm not, if it's not something I'm familiar with or used to, then I don't really like to, eat it. But I think I was just giving this a thought, and I think maybe it might be a good strategy to have like free plant-based food. And then the food that isn't plant-based, for example, comes at an affordable price. I think this would encourage people to kind of like maybe try out plant-based food. I think this is how personally I'd go about it for next time. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that.
Or to price higher, even higher, if free food is not a possibility, have different prices and this.
Well, I don't think I have much to add, but I think that's an important question, especially when you look at how diverse the population is here, and even for me, coming from my background, I don't think Ghanaians would want to embrace like 100% plant-based. It will be a lot of effort to prove to them the reason why they need to transition. So I think she made mention of the fact that there's a need for collaboration. Collaboration can help us create more awareness, more education, let people understand why we are trying to really do this. It's not only about filling your belly with just anything. So yeah, I think, yeah, a lot of collaboration and education can help us get there. Yeah.
Thank you. Caroline, any?
I'd love to talk to you after. I have many thoughts. Yes, so very good question. Accountability with all of this is super key. Like it's huge. Like we have to follow up to be like, where
Yeah.
where are the receipts? Right.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. Sorry, that's one thing we did. Even after they agreed to our ask and all of that, I think prior to this main event, there was another arrangement here in Dubai where we had to quickly get someone on board to join, go track what they are doing, because it was a meeting with the chefs, a close meeting with the chefs, training for the chefs. So we wanted our young people to go and see for themselves if they are really following what we asked them and what they have promised us. And I think that is actually very important, following up on it to see if you are really meeting that standard you said you would adhere to. So yeah.
Thank you. We can take one more question if there is.
Thank you so much for sharing just now. So I really appreciate your efforts in at increasing like plant-based food like proportion in the venue. And personally, I think I found those plant-based food quite tasty, to be honest, and I think it's really up to standard. But one thing I would like to ask is that during your process of discussing with like the presidency or different catering organizations on the menu, have you guys met any challenges and around the issue about affordability? Because I found that the food generally provided here is quite expensive to me, I think. Especially for me, I'm from Hong Kong, which is considered as one of the cities with the highest living cost, and the food here is much more expensive than those in Hong Kong. So this is you have encountered during like your discussions with them, and any solutions that you think that it would help you to like better the situation going forward, or maybe in the future COPs to kind of like make it as more inclusive COP, especially for young people, because I know a lot of them they come here with. Thank you.
I don't know if you want to mention anything about the process, because she asked for the challenges during the process for the youth or something like that. Maybe that could work, or for anyone that needs it and can apply for it. But, yeah.
Okay, I think I'll talk more about the challenges we face. Honestly, affordability in that sense, even trying to define it with price was very difficult. And I'm sure Caroline could attest to that. We had several meetings, and even the professors and experts, they couldn't really help us define it. That's we even go back to the young people to find out how they truly see defining that, because we also have people from diverse backgrounds, like I said earlier. So what will be, let's say, $1 may be affordable to you, may possibly be very expensive for someone, very difficult trying to come to that point. And I really understand the fact that you are saying that food here is very expensive, which I can also attest to. Aside that, even trying to prove all of that, I think that it was also I think we had difficulties trying to find more details as to how arrangements were actually going. We were closely following up, but it was still closed. It wasn't really open. I don't know if it's because we are young people trying to push this. So there's a little bit of, okay, young people, you don't need to know this and all of that. But some of the information too was not like readily available for us to also understand the process. It could have really helped us maybe brainstorm more and then bring out like practical solutions. But because we didn't have that, it was very difficult for us to influence some of the key things within the whole structure. So yeah, for me, I would say those are the major challenges that stood out for me on this. Yeah. I don't know if Caroline wants to.
Like, what complicates it is the that it's catering. Oh, it's like, what did I say? What complicates it is that it's catering, and there's great data on the cost of a health, but when you factor in, if anybody works in the food industry, you're factor in labor, price of food, it's a logistical nightmare. That doesn't mean we don't need to tackle it. I don't know if in the climate conscious catering program that he's working on, if they're trying to envelop affordability into that, because it's a challenge. I don't know what to say. It's just challenging.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. I think we do need to wrap up this panel segment, but thank you so much for your insights. I thought it was very important to have this background and the youth passion really highlighted. And I think this is a good transition over to hearing some more about the climate conscious catering strategy from Paul, who will be coming up next. So I'll tell you some more about that, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, Paul. So next we'll have a little bit of a fireside chat with Paul Noonan, talking about some of the partners that we have mentioned, some more of the different advocacy that was involved this year beyond the youth call and passion for this, which has, of course, been the focus from ProVeg International, Youngo, and Food at COP, but we want to hear some more from the rest of the team. So Paul, if you can come on up. I know this is supposed to be a bit of a casual chat, so I don't know if me standing at the podium makes it less casual. We can chat like this.
Why not? Casual.
We're next to each other, so thank you so much for rushing over here. I know it's a very packed day.
Just a little.
It's a little bit crazy. With you might have heard about the Leaders Declaration on Food Systems also coming out, but Paul, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about the climate conscious catering strategy and the advocacy also from your organizations and other important stakeholders, like of course the COP28 team who is running around today too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And first, I just want to pass on apologies from Vicky, who is the catering manager. She's running around the site. So the catering team is quite stretched, as you can imagine. There's a lot going on a complex event like this in terms of just making sure everything's happening and everyone's fed and the food's in the right place and it's at the right quality and it's all happening and supplies are coming in for the next days and all those things. So Vicky's running around. I saw her at the high level briefly, and she just said to pass on her apologies for not being able to run over. But yeah, no. So in terms of catering, so I can tell you a little bit of the journey and the story, and then I guess how what to expect on site. You've probably already seen that and talked a little bit about it, but maybe some other things just to have a look at in terms of what's going on behind the scenes. So obviously catering at previous COPs has had some moments. It's had some challenges. And I know that there's been a long-standing effort to try and improve that. And I think that's really important and really critical because it brings integrity. And I know Her Excellency Mariam just mentioned the climate conscious catering in her statement as she talked about the food initiative. And so this is a major high-level food initiative, and she said it's really important for the UAE to also ensure that when we're talking about food, that the options that are being presented are actually also heading in the right direction. And so this conversation's been going on at Glasgow, Madrid. There's been conversations behind the scenes, just starting to sort of say, why is there so many challenges? What's going on? And it's part of a broader conversation about how do we actually think more about the connections between what we talk about and then what we do. And so that, from 2017, we started to see how do you bring chefs into the conversation as actors rather than just passive behind the scenes actors that don't get invited to speak, but how do you bring them forward? And part of it is trying to help them have a narrative to connect to, that it connects to the broader conversation and ecosystem. And that's been something that through initiatives like the Chefs Manifesto, which was created by chefs in 35 countries, connecting the work they do to the SDGs, created a set of actions. So there's been this gentle build. And then over COPs, there's been a conversation about this. We were very involved with the UAE during Expo on the food agriculture work, and so built a relationship with the ministry team, but also with a number of partners on site and in the city. And so when it came to Egypt, we started to talk to them about what are they planning. And there was a lot of commitment right back then about saying we really need to think carefully about getting the food right. We need to be thinking about how we do this. Those kinds of aspirations, when you're thinking about it, in some ways easy to have. Actually, then putting them into practice is really, really complicated because we know, is anyone a caterer here? Anyone worked in catering? I mean, it's complicated, there's pressure on price, there's ingredients coming in, it's always a rush. So there's all these things going on. And so you have to think about how do you think about that system and how do you shift it? And you've got to get the incentives right, you've got to get the education right, you've got to have the supply chain there, you've got to think about all of this. And so it's quite a piece. And so the approach that was taken, the sustainability team and the catering team came together at COP28, and they said, here, we really want to do this. How do we do it? They set some targets, and those targets were in dialogue, obviously, with the host country, with others, listening to what was going on. Obviously, the inputs from letters and other things was all taken into account there, and said, how do we do this? What do we do? And so they set goals, they set targets. They then had to work out how do you work with the existing suppliers, the 70-odd companies, from very small food trucks right through to big catering companies. How do you set those targets and then actually build that into the contracting approach? How do you then also think about measurement? How do you think about supply? How do you think about communication? And so when they started to do that, there was obviously target set. There was tools that identified, so things to use for measurement, and they went with a company called Nutritics. And so Nutritics is one of 6 companies that were talked to about this process. They do measurement of carbon in food. They also look at nutritional levels. They take data sets, life cycle assessments, other data sets from USDA, other big data groupings around food products, and load that in so that a recipe can be put in and it can spit out data. And data and information is key. It's all good to say, yes, we want climate-friendly food, but what does that actually mean? And you've got to look at that and you've got to go, okay. And there's lots of great examples of the chefs going, oh, I'll put tempeh. And then they look and they go, oh, the water use goes through the roof. So then you go, oh, if we're trying to be water sensitive, how do we bring that, and then you end up with turnip. And you kind of you start working your way through ingredients, but it's information enables people to pivot. So there was this information, tools, and then the next bit was training. And so we were involved right back from Egypt, meeting weekly with the team, trying to go, how do we, as an external player, trying to help them to go, how do you work with chefs in a way to kind of create behavioral shifts, and also through inspiration. So, and a little bit of competitiveness, but you kind of inspire people with what's possible, but then also help them to kind of come out and then use their craft, their skill, to actually then apply that. And so we developed a framework in time that became a training program that went for 4 days, where we had a day listening to experts, more classroom style. Then we had 2 days working in the kitchen, where they had chefs from outside, from around the world, kind of a diversity of chefs come in and do workshops and say, here's their ideas, here's what they're doing, working with different ingredients. They had to break into teams and take dishes that were traditional dishes that were served at big events and go, how do we make them better? How do we hit these targets? And the idea was to hit a target of 2.3 kilograms of carbon per day for 3 meals and 1 snack, under 2,000 calories, meeting the nutritional guidelines by the UAE Ministry of Health, and using less water than other dishes. So this was the target set. It's very hard to work out even the targets, because it's like, what nutritional frame do you use? Well, you can't take like from another country. You've got to work out within the local country, but then do you have to bring in that ministry? Like, there's all these kind of conversations that go on behind the scenes. Anyway, we worked that out, did the training, and then the day 4 we went out to farms and visited 3 different farming groups and try to bring that kind of cycle in. Was it perfect? No. Was it a good step in terms of learnings? Yes. Is it a step and a foundation to build on? And I saw Her Excellency yesterday, and she said to me, she said, Paul, we're never going to get this perfect. It's about making a really good attempt and then learning from it and building on it. And so that's what has happened. So now when you go, all of the menus had to go through the system. They were evaluated and they had to try and hit the targets. Some groups hit the target on all their dishes because of the style of food. Like, it's very hard to put an ice cream stand and a salad bar in the same measurement thing and try and work it out. The salad bar is obviously going to hit the target really well, and the other one's probably not. Now, so like working those things out is tricky, huh? But you've got to be a little bit fluid in the way you look at it. And so they've actually done that. Some groups then got excited about it. They lent in, they went further, and there's hashtags, not hashtags, QR codes on most of the menus. You won't see them everywhere, but hopefully you'll see them in more and more places, where the QR code you scan and it'll bring up the nutritics information. And so you can look at that and you can kind of at least be informed. So the idea is that not everyone's going to make an informed choice. The people like yourselves, I'm assuming, want to make informed choices. You want to be going, yeah, we're here advocating. We want to be also eating in a way that makes sense with what we're saying. So how do we do that? And so here's the information for you to make that choice. Success, I would see, is lots of people making that choice, and then people see that's profitable. They see it's the right way to go, and then more and more. So like, what I would encourage you guys to do is go out there and go to each of the stands and ask them about which are the most climate friendly dishes. What's the most nutritional, benefit? What's here? Some of the stuff I have no idea. But if enough people keep asking them, they'll raise that question, and then that's how you drive change. So I don't know if I've given too much information, but I've just tried to give a bit of a frame, and it's not so much a chat. Sorry, Lana.
It's okay. I think we can chat with the audience a bit more, because I want to make sure to give them a chance to ask you any questions before I hold you up too much. So maybe we can start in the back. I know you've been waiting, if that's okay. Thank you, Caroline. The team effort here today.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much for this overview. My name is Malte Clausen. I am a consultant, and I work with food companies on plant-based and sustainable business development. And I was just I had 2 questions. First was just specifically on the numbers. To try to catch whether that was target that was realized this year, or whether that was the initial target, and then and maybe we're going above or beyond or below that. So that's that was my major question. And then also for future COPs, how will that target be set? And is there like a plan like we do in the company I work for, it's Boston Consulting Group. We have for our aviation emissions, we set target annually, and every year it has to go down by a certain percent. So we can get better and better over time at decreasing our emissions. So I'm curious if this 2.3 target, then at the next COP could be 2.2 or 2.0.
Yeah, look, good question. This is the first time this has been done this way. There's been different attempts in different COPs. Like Glasgow, there was an attempt at trying to work through this. I don't know the exact targets and what they set. We use this target. It was originally, I think, 2.7 in one of the cycles, and it went down to 2.3. And so we went with a lot of this was research done on what different groups were saying and what different agreed targets were to try and work out what was the level. And so I don't have an answer on whether it would go down in future COPs. I would like to think so. The way that we did it in the training, there were people that there was one chef got their meal, three full-size meals plus a snack under 300 grams. So there is ways where people, when you've got a target like this, they just go for it. In terms of setting something realistic, it's based on what the scientists tell us. I'm not a scientist. So it was done through the COP28 team that went to the sustainability lead, who's doing all the carbon measurement for the event and everything. And they looked at the data and then got an advice and agreed on the target. So I'm not the expert on that, but I can ask them. In terms of legacy, this is something that's being discussed. The intent is to try and do this at future COPs. So the team's view was, can we create like a guidebook how to do COP food more sustainably? The question is, you've got to hand that on, and the host country's got to accept it. There is also conversations with the UNFCCC about pushing it that way as well. So obviously, that's also important. So it's definitely on the cards. We are going to be looking at how do we get some funding to try and support that and to develop that, not just for COP, but for other significant events, Olympics, other events that are happening as well. Because I think there is there's many efforts racing to try and sort this out. Maybe a group like BCG could help in that. But yeah, I think to me, it's about ambition.
Thank you. I think we can take one or two more questions.
Yeah. In the meantime, I can ask. Thanks for giving all the details on. I had no idea that you had so much work from your side, so that was amazing to know. And I also work in the sustainability department of the Youth Olympic Games in 2018, and it was really hard, so I understand you. And it would be great if you can deliver those guidelines, as you know, for instance, C40 has these guidelines. So for all of these events, the host country has to do events 100% plant-based. In case it's useful for you to say, hey, C40 is doing this, and the host countries are accepting this. So maybe this is something that UNFCCC could do and could be taken to FAO and other UN dependencies working on sustainability. It would be great.
Maybe we can take one more question if someone else is eager. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you very much. So I got the understanding from your delivery that most of the considerations were pre-preparation. Okay. Another important leg to this discussion will be post-preparation. So we're looking at leftover and food waste and the management. Was there any considerations in the metrics that you used?
Okay, so let me answer that, and then I'll come to. So on the food waste, there was significant goals set already for Expo. Those goals were stretched for. So this is an example that goes to your point. During Expo, there was a lot of initiatives around food waste and loss. For COP, they took that even further. 10%. Also acknowledged that in the UAE, it's like 60 something% food waste. It's one of the highest in the world. So 10% is like scary because it's really low. So there's all kinds of initiatives across the expo site, and there's a difference between the expo site working with the COP28. COP28 is leasing the space essentially from a tenant. The expo site has a number of initiatives. They have waste treatment plants, and there's a national strategy through NEMA for waste management in the UAE. And they work on food rescue, food recovery. There's a lot of composting on site. There's a range of different things. There's actually a farm that's built in the green zone, if you haven't been, that's doing using biochar. It's taking water out of the air. There's all kinds of things going on. So there is a number of initiatives. There is a few food loss and waste conversations coming up. So I can, there's more on that, but you can also see it in different parts around the site. So in terms of the conversation that you were saying, just in regards to some of the challenges, there is obviously the ability to kind of use those guidelines from other events to help influence. I think when we looked at this, there is obviously a target of plant-based, but it's not exclusively to plant-based. And so some of the plant-based things use way more water. They're way less healthy. And yes, their climate might, and some of them are not even better on the climate. So just because something's plant-based, I don't believe it's necessarily better. Okay. Just because it's an animal product, it's necessarily bad. Okay. So I'd say there's good and bad on both sides. At the moment, there's a radical imbalance in our system. And so we need a much more diverse system that has much more diversity and much more shifts. But we run a campaign on doubling bean consumption, where like lots of things, but I'm also at times saying an egg, some animal protein in the right part of the world can be the difference between malnutrition or not. And so I always put that out there. I think many people in the world need to be moving much more towards a plant-rich diet. Absolutely. Is it 100% plant-based? No. That's my advocate. But everyone's got different views on this, and I think we need all the views. But it's not, you eat a cow or you're vegan. To me, there's a lot of room in between, and particularly for big global events that are global. If there's events where certain countries will say if they don't have animal products, they haven't eaten, and they are here negotiating. They're trying to make a difference, and so I think it's up to us to be creative in how we educate people about how much you should eat, what you should eat, how you can do that in different ways that has different impacts. So that's not a UNFCCC or a top rule. I'm not speaking on behalf of them. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but I'm actually saying that's something we talk about, is focusing on plant-based ingredients, giving them more elevation, championing them in people's diets, making them more delicious. But we also say, if you're going to use animal-based products, make sure that the way that they're produced is much more sustainable. Think about use less, use them more intentionally, use the whole animal, all of these kinds of things. So it's looking at both sides. Both sides can actually improve.
If I could jump into that, I think it shows how, we in advocating for a more plant-based COP and not saying it has to be 100% plant-based COP, we can get so many different stakeholders on board. And I think that's really helped to make it possible this year, because so many people can get on board with shifting in that direction from a lot of different groups. And then, Paul, I'd just love to wrap up this part with you by kind of having any closing remarks and last takeaways from you. And personally, I'd really be interested to hear more about if there's any hopeful learnings from all of these many considerations that you shared and going into the future.
Look, there's always the question of more time and more resource, and you can do more, and we all have that. Putting any big event together is always very challenging. And so the team that's been doing this is incredibly under pressure. And so I think the fact that they've really worked hard, adding extra layers, even adding the data into the system was really hard. Like, you've got to get all the ingredients in, you've got to then put all your recipes through, you've got to try and hit the targets, then you've got to adjust. That's not easy when you're also running events. Like, this isn't their only event here. So I think the team need to be really encouraged. I think we need to celebrate and really jump up and down about the amazing dishes out there that you see. We need to talk about the dishes that really make a difference. Like I was at, and I think Louis might have been here earlier, but I was at PXB Park, and you're looking through there, and there's dishes there that are amazing plant-based dishes, but then you look at their data and you go, whoa, that's like crazy. That's my whole day's ration. And then there's others that are like really low carbon, low water. And so it's about how do we think about the data? How do we think about the story, the actual what is in the ingredients, the way it comes, how it's done, and then how it tastes and how it's delivered. And so for me, it's about getting out there. We need people to go and discover those dishes and celebrate them and tell everyone about them and get more people to eat them, because that's you voting with your dollars, with your choices. And that's actually how you drive change. And so my hope is that at the end of COP, there's a bunch of things that we can celebrate in terms of stories and successes and examples. And they can become part of the story to encourage, to champion. And there'll be things that we need to improve. And those things we need to be creative about how we approach them. So there is going to be a session on the 10th called Food at COP in the Green Zone. Her Excellency Mariam's coming. And so there's a number of things that will be kind of talked about there as well. But, if you do find a vendor that's doing an amazing thing, tell me about it, please. Because I'm also trying to get around and see places, but I've got people in leadership positions in different sectors that want to go and visit certain stands. And so they're going, tell us where we should visit. Who's doing this really well? And so to me, that's where we can also bring attention, spotlight, and it's also part of, encouraging that behavior change. But think about this as a transition, a change. And this is, a really big step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul, for joining us. I know you're very busy today. And please, if you are available on the 10th, feel free to check out that event as well. It'll have a lot of more aspects to it too, like chefs that were involved and how they were able to try out some of these different meals that Paul has been mentioning. So encourage everyone to check out that event too. For ours, we will be focusing a little bit more also on the plant-based part. So I want to call up two more speakers, Karim from Climato and Juliet Tronchon from the Food for Climate Pavilion, which you might have heard of already. So just to talk a little bit more about, for us, one of the biggest interests was really the plant-based commitment this year. And that's also been one of the interests that has gotten a lot of press attention, a lot of excitement from people, is that aspect of the 2/3 vegan and vegetarian food, and really trying to have more plant-based options, such as that plant-based food park. We'll give them some more minutes. That was mentioned from Louis Blake and PXB. If you want this one. I'll just keep chatting with you while we figure that out. Okay, we started it out. So I want to start by going to Korea. We've been talking a little bit about the background of advocacy in the first panel with Paul as well. And in COP26, Climato was very involved. And then you're involved again this year, particularly on work looking at plant-based and emissions. And so I'd love to start there, and then we'll talk about the Food for Climate Pavilion some more and how we're addressing plant-based in content.
Sure. So for Climato, just for context, we're a sustainability company. We help the food industry understanding their food-related emissions. So we help them understand. I think you're blocking the camera. No problem. So we help food companies, hotels, restaurant chains, and understanding their food-related emissions by also looking, of course, at the ingredients, their country of origin, and so on. So first, to drive awareness to the chefs and people preparing the meals on how to reduce their food-related emissions, but also, of course, drive choices. So this is just the context about Climato. So regarding COP26, as back then we didn't have guidelines on food sustainability served during COP. So the way we started is that we started working with Levy, that was the main catering partner there, and we started from scratch, right? So, of course, for the COP26, they wanted some sustainability, let's say, guidelines and requirements, but it wasn't that official and that serious, at least. So we started really crafting the story from zero. So first we have them sourced locally from Scotland, seasonal. So of course we had to start somewhere. And then we had them also just set up a baseline on what should be an average meal. And the setup there was 0.9 kilograms CO2e. Sorry, yeah, 0.9 kilograms CO2e. So we were below the 2030 scenario that was 1.1. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, just on average, just for the context also, the UN recommends a 0.5 kilogram CO2e for a meal if you want to respect the 1.5 degrees scenario. So that was very challenging. The 0.5 is, we're still very, very far from 0.5. On average in Europe today, the average meal is 1.7 kilogram CO2e. So we have a long way to go. In France, by the way, it's 2.0. I live in France. Juliette is French. So 2.0. So yeah, those were the guidelines, 0.9, and then it created a lot of buzz because it was the first time where COP started talking about food sustainability and the climate impact of food. It also did a huge buzz because there was an error in calculations because Levy was using the tool, so they input a wrong data. I'm talking about this anecdote for a reason, because it showcased that a croissant is more impactful than a bacon roll. So the French Minister for Energy Transition was talking about, like, yeah, croissant has a very high impact. We should eat more pork. So yeah, and it went to Time magazine, it went to NPR in the US. But the outcome was that people were more and more aware of, okay, actually food has a direct climate impact, and we have a direct, like our choices have an impact on the environment. So that was for COP26, very challenging, very interesting, and I think it set up like not a baseline, but I think it influenced other actors such as yourselves and COP28 today. And okay, how can we measure this? How can we do this? How can we move this forward? So as Paul mentioned, we were one of the 6 companies who were discussing with the delegation to see if we can do it or not. Another company was selected. Great for them. It's for the greater cause. So our involvement today for COP28, so working with you, of course, other actors, especially private sector. So we've been noticing that the private sector is playing a big role in this. We're talking about hotel chains mainly. So we have partnered with Accor. Not doing any ad here, but we were impressed by their commitment to deliver sustainable food throughout the event, but also beyond. So by crafting 45 meals that will be used throughout all the 80 properties in the UAE, that are on average 0.7 kilograms CO2e, but also carbon labeling all their outlets in the UAE in 80 hotels, which is around 6,000 recipes. And so, yes, driving awareness to the chefs, but also their guests on climate impact of food. Also involved in different initiatives such as NEMA. NEMA is the National Food Waste, let's say, initiative from Excellency, but also with Hilton, UNEP, you name it, trying to be involved with as many drive this forward, because I think all those entities have a role to play in driving the transition.
Thank you. And for Juliette, we've been talking about catering and sustainability of food, particularly the role of plant-based, but catering isn't the only way to talk about plant-based and that side of food sustainability and diets. So can you tell us a little bit more about how we're making sure that that's at COP and where you can find some more of that discussion?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's funny to be there to talk about the pavilion content and not chase some logistic problems about the catering, especially. But yeah, I can talk about that. Yeah, so I'm from Provenge, actually, Provenge International, but we are the one that are leading the Food for Climate Pavilion efforts together with all our partners that you can see on the left side for you of the pavilion. And yeah, we started that last year, actually at COP27, when we noticed that a food system weren't discussed at all in the discussion. So we decided, hey, why not do a pavilion together and addressing the pressing issues that we actually need to tackle tackle climate change. Sorry, I've been dealing with a lot of logistical sides and did not prepare anything for today, but I'll be fine. So we decided to do that, and it was actually a really big success. We had a great attendance because people want to talk about food system and want to talk about plant-rich diets and why it's important to move towards more plant-rich diets if we are serious about achieving the Paris Agreement. So after that, we decided, okay, it was so much fun. Let's do that again at COP28. So it's still so much fun, but also a lot of stress. But yeah, we have a full programming tackling all of that from today. I mean, starting now with 2 events. We had the Great Food Debate this morning. That was actually more of a dialogue, including all the stakeholders around food systems, from plant-rich diet to actually livestock agriculture. And we have actually 9 more days following that on different topics. We divided the program into some kind of 4 chapters. So the first chapter is about why are we doing that, setting the context, why we need to talk about food systems. The second chapter is more about the solution. So what are we doing actually to tackle food systems? And the third chapter is about who needs to be included. So we have actually a day focused on youth as well. So they have a big day for themselves, but we want to talk about all the stakeholders that needs to be included in the food systems transformation. So from private sector to small farmers, to policymakers, well, everyone. So all of you. And the last chapter is about how we move forward. Like, what do we do after COP? Because it's not only about like discussing here, but more about actionable solution. Because I mean, it's really nice that we're talking about that today, but what are we doing in the reality? So that's what the last chapter is about. And yeah, we also have the food system pavilion on the other side that I want to mention still, because this year we are collaborating to show that this transformation is only possible if we work together, even if we have different perspectives. For example, we really more focus on the plant-based side of the transformation. That's what we advocate for. But we need to be all together in this if we want to achieve something. And the debate this morning was actually about that as well. So I recommend you to watch the stream if you want, because it was really, really interesting. But yeah, that's about it. So if you have any question more on the program or anything afterwards, you can always talk to me. Anyway, I'll be there until the end. So yeah, that's your chance.
Great. Does anyone have a question around the plant-based priority and how we're addressing that through catering and the pavilion? Not then I'll just ask kind of a last question, which is, how we're bringing that, kind of like why we're focusing and also any last takeaways I think would work well.
Because we think it's a really important part of this. Only the first day of the event, but we discussed today already that there is plenty of solutions, that only plant-based is probably not